What's up, everyone? This is Vin here from the Diamond Geezers, your gang green geezer. Uh, Thank you for staying with me and everybody reaching out to me. I've been under the weather for the past couple of weeks, but I definitely was following what's been going on with the Jets. And this here will be the recap and my reaction to the Jets draft. So here we go. We'll start right away with my Jets reaction. Try to get one of these banners to show up here, my friends. It's been a little while since I've been into the site. Here we go. Pick number one. Well, actually, you know what? First thing I'll start with, I'm gonna grade. I graded this draft an A minus. I believe Mel Kiper did the same. And the reason I did that, and we'll get to it when we get to this pick, was simply the trade up for Cade Klubnik. I know he's not supposed to be the quarterback of the future. I didn't think the Jets would even draft a quarterback in this draft. He seems to be graded out as at best a QB2, so a career backup, maybe a QB3. Most draft experts had him graded for 6th, 7th round pick. So the fact that the Jets took him not only did they take him in the 4th round, but they moved up to get him in that round. That's the only reason why I give him the A minus and not an A for this. I love this draft, as most Jet fans do in the offseason, because that seems to be where we win. But again, things feel a little bit different. Muji again working his magic, and what we did learn after the draft completed was Muji explained how they scrapped their old grading system and came up with a brand new system for this particular draft. And that was a little bit exciting for me to hear, because it's last year, things were quick, short amount of time, really don't have a lot of time from the time he and Glenn were hired to revamp their entire draft grading system. But to hear that they did that, got all the input from the different scouts and came up with their own system, gives me a lot more confidence in not only what they did in the draft, but what they're doing overall. They're not just winging it or flying by the seat of their pants. There actually is a plan that's in place that they're have implemented, and are continuing to implement. Again, this is going to be the hopeful Jets optimist in me at this point. And let's just jump right into it. Pick one, number 2 overall in the 1st round, David Bailey. Now, those of you who saw my previous episodes, my first 2 drafts, I had them taking Bailey. I did 4 mock drafts. My first 2, I had them taking Bailey. The last 2, I had them taking Reese. If you see the scoring, the way all the draft, it's funny when you listen. I would have taken Reese. I would have went Bailey, but when you see how they were scored, it was scored pretty evenly. If you were on a scale of 1 to 100, however these people were scoring, most of them had them within a point of each other, one way or the other. And I definitely see the people who said the higher upside, the potential higher upside for Reese, more versatility. But what you got in Bailey, clearly, as I said, even when I was mocking Reese to them, he was the top-rated edge rusher in this class by far. Immediately plug-and-play starter. Will they work? They're going to work on him. The only downfall you hear to his game is not great at setting the edge against the run. They'll work with him on that. But what you need is someone who can get after the quarterback, especially in this division. Josh Allen, Drake May, and now you got Malik Willis in Miami. You have no choice but to get players that immediately can plug and play and get after the quarterback. This guy is a game wrecker. And if you looked, and obviously everybody who saw the draft, what I also did while I was under the weather was able to even take a few days and not just have that immediate maybe hyperbolic, over the top reaction to what happened, but see why the people were saying what they were saying about these players, where you see Bailey year after year after year in college getting better and better and better. A lot of people read into the fact when the Jets canceled their top 30 visit for him. What people didn't realize or didn't allude to at the time was the Jets have Frank Reich. They have coaches who saw him at Stanford who were able to give them additional feedback that the 30 for 30 wasn't necessary. You only have 30 visits. So, and not every team takes them all. And sometimes maybe they did, and they did get 3 offers that came out afterwards as well. The Jets got 3 offers for the number 2 pick, all of them wanting to come up to get Bailey. Now think about that, folks. For all of those who said Reese, and this is not a knock against Reese. I think he's going to be a great player. He, of course, is going to get compared to Bailey because Reese was picked by the Giants, Bailey by the Jets. So as long as they're both in New York, those two will be compared against each other. From the Jets' perspective, if Reese outplays Bailey, it's did you blow this pick? From the Jets' perspective, there's no win from it. If Bailey does well, great. If he's worse than Reese, you're going to be looked at as blowing that pick. But 3 separate teams were trying to move up to get that pick, to pick Bailey. It was not to pick Reese, it was to pick Bailey. But none of the offers were good enough for the Jets to move off of that pick, and they stood firm, and they took Bailey. Love it. This defense is going to be built around pressure, disruption, and this guy, by far, was the best player in the draft. For that, I'm excited to see what he can do with this revamped defense. Again, as I've stated in previous episodes, with Dunbar back as the defensive line coach, with everybody they brought in, they exercised the 50-year option on Will McDonald. So you'll have McDonald and Bailey on each side. Bailey could be seen as a much, much better version of McDonald, but similar in a bad way in that neither one of them are fantastic at setting the edge or good at setting the edge against the run. But I believe Dunbar will work on that. I believe with the other players that the Jets have brought in on that defensive line and in the secondary, the front 7 as well, all the upgrades that they've made, I believe that Bailey was the perfect plug-and-play fit. He definitely was the safer pick. As on one of my earliest podcasts, Geezer Pete, for all those who follow the Diamond Geezers, his son was on a podcast with me. He said that Bailey's great, but it definitely was a safer pick to Reese. And I agree with that. He's definitely the safer pick because it's a known entity. You know exactly what you don't know what Reese is going to be. There's a lot of players. I believe who was it? Isaiah Simmons was that Swiss Army knife type player who really never found his niche in the NFL. He just got bounced around and was a high pick and never really lived up to that because he was a tweener. Wasn't too big to be a safety, too small to be a linebacker. So where did it really fit? He had some flashes here and there, but overall didn't live up to the hype and his draft status. And I'm not saying that's going to be Reese, but when you're a Jet team that, look, everybody knows, and I'll talk about this a little more at the end of this when I get past the picks. Glenn's on the hot seat. I don't think Muji is, but I think Glenn is. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, a little bit later in the episode. But again, Bailey, day 1 starter. I think double-digit sacks in his first year. Potentially even a Pro Bowl. He'll be up for Defensive Rookie of the Year, no doubt about it. The second pick, which was pick 16, which got a lot of heat in a bad way at some point, because at the time, Mekhi Lemon was still sitting there. Omar Cooper Jr. was still sitting there. which we'll talk about next because the Jets did trade up to get him. And kudos to Connor Rogers. I saw a video where he didn't predict the Jets would trade up to 30 to get Omar Cooper Jr. He predicted the Jets would get him if they stood at pick 33. But we'll talk about that next when we get to Omar Cooper Jr. But Kenyon Sadiq, I'm not saying he's a Brock Bowers or Warren from the Colts, but the past those drafts for those players, there were a lot of people screaming for the Jets to pick those guys. Game-changing, uncoverable tight ends. Now, this guy, Sadiq, is not the prototype in terms of his height. He's 6'3". But everybody, I'm sure by now, saw the video. If you didn't, go look it up online. There's a video where they superimpose Sadiq, Christian McCaffrey, and Bijan Robinson in their 40-yard dash. And he smoked the both of them. Two of the top running backs, two of the top players, period, in the NFL. And this guy smoked them both in the 40-yard dash. And he's not just a speed demon. He's not just a workout warrior. He is going to be a mismatch nightmare, in my opinion. Maybe not from day one. Again, it's not like you're throwing him into a team that's got the quarterback situation, on lock. It's an upgrade over last year, but it's not like, there's a frontline Pro Bowl quarterback that is going to be thrown to him. But guess what? Bowers didn't have one either. Warren didn't have one either. So Geno Smith is more than capable of using Kenyon Sadiq as a weapon. 6'3", running a 4.39, versatile, and is a great inline blocker. Let me not skip that point. That usually with these athletic tight ends, that's the problem that they always come with. They're not willing. They might be willing blockers, but they're not good at it. There's plenty of film with Sadiq doing a fantastic job as an inline blocker, which he will have to do in this offense. And what options that gives the Jets is now with him being in line, you could have Mason Taylor out there at the same time, Breece Hall. You have 12 personnel. You could have Taylor, Sadiq, Hall. You have Cooper Jr., which we'll talk about in a second. You have Garrett Wilson. Are they going to hand it to Garrett? Are they going to hand it to Breece? No linebacker is going to be able to cover Sadiq straight up. Very few safeties might be able to cover Sadiq straight up. So it's just, I get where that Lemon was there, and in the moment, I believe I saw a video where someone graded that an F pick, and I think later on after the draft completed, they revised that because especially with what the Jets did next and the next pick they got. But he's good again, immediate contributor, day one starter with the potential to be a top tier tight end by his second or third year. I mean, what this team has done as in this offseason and in this draft is whoever that quarterback of the future is that they grab in 2027, because I don't think it's Klubnik or anybody else they have on the team at this point. They are building a fantastic infrastructure around him so far. Let's go to the next pick, Omar Cooper Jr. As I said, the Jets traded up with the 49ers. They got pick 30 and took Omar Cooper Jr. And you also, again, you'll see also a pattern here as well. Taking players that were in winning programs, Texas Tech, Oregon, Indiana, and we'll talk about another Indiana player next. Not only are you getting top talent players, speed, attitude, but they're coming from winning programs that if you get enough of those players in your locker room, it's a plus that it can permeate throughout your locker room to bring that type of an attitude to an organization. Now, I know what the longtime Jet fans are saying. We've brought in a lot of players over the years from winning college programs, and this team this organization just suffocates them and takes the will out of them. My hope, my feeling is the tide has begun to turn. The ship, as Aaron Glenn likes to say, is turning, slowly turning, but definitely turning. But Omar Cooper Jr., I believe I saw him compare. Someone did a comparison. They called him like I believe it was a Quincy Nunwa type. Not a bad comparison for those of us old enough to have seen Nunwa play. Physical. A lot of people keep calling him a slot receiver because he played in the slot a lot this past season, but he played outside the year before. So he gives you a lot of versatility, good hands, good yards after catch. Again, another willing blocker down the field, and not just, but it's blocking in space. That's also for Sadiq. It's one thing to block when the guy's just engaging you immediately, but when you have to block out in space, when you're out there on an island and the running back is trying to set up the defender, you have to be able to be versatile with how you're blocking out in space and not just get turned around or pushed aside, and the defender will make the play. You have to be able to stick your blocks in space downfield, and Cooper is great at doing that. And he's a wide receiver too. He's a wide receiver too. You have the wide receiver one in Wilson. You also have Adonai Mitchell. There's still some free agents out there. Again, it's still a long off season. There's still maybe they might bring in another veteran body to be a fourth receiver. We'll touch upon some of the undrafted free agents that they got. A couple of guys with some high upside, but you can't really count on. I know the Jets have hit on some of these guys in the past, and these guys are hit on year after year. You just never know when is this the year you found that guy. I love it when all these draft nicks crap all over these late round picks. And then not forgetting that Brady was a 6th-round pick. Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant. So you do, and then they show a stat where most of the players on NFL rosters came from the 4th to 7th rounds. So in the same breath that they're crapping on the players that come later in the draft, and then they're showing stats that show these are the guys who actually build a foundation and are going to be the majority of your team, or close to the majority of your team. So I never understood where that comes from, but I really love those first 3 picks that they made in the first round. That was A+ in my opinion, what they did there. Then the 4th pick, D'Angelo Ponds. I believe it was Daniel Jeremiah gave him the NFL comparison of Aaron Glenn, and it was a funny scene when they go inside the Jets draft room and Muji's pointing out to Glenn, look, like they're comparing him to you. And I think Ponds is a better version of Aaron Glenn, but you could see the similarities. Shorter cornerback, but Ponds is built like a tank. And a lot of people think they automatically, because he was 5'8", we're saying slot corner. That's why he can't play on the outside. Too small to play on the outside. Another good comp he got was DJ Reed, who we all saw recently, and was a competent, again, smaller cornerback, wasn't in the slot, could cover on the outside. And Ponds he showed it in high school, showed it in college, that he can cover on the outside. He does not have to be a slot corner just because of his size. There are people who are calling that pick the pick of the draft. There are some people who are calling it the pick of the draft. I don't know if I'd go that far, but again, in Indiana, championship program. So you're bringing in guys, talented players and I believe Ponds right away is going to be start. I think he's starting right away. I don't care how much money Stevens makes, or young guys that we had last year, who we signed in the offseason. This guy is going to be because he's also a ball hawk. And everybody knows The Jets had 0 interceptions last year. That cannot happen again. We cannot do that. It won't happen again. That's just a friggin' anomaly. It's only something that would happen to the Jets, and it did happen to us with the upgrade in your coaching staff, the upgrades you've made on your defense, and now in your secondary. Quarter one, game one, they're intercepting a pass. That's my early prediction. That's the only prediction I'm going to make at this point. Quarter one, no worse than in the first half of the first game of the season, they'll have an interception. Just, the ball didn't bounce or fall their way last year. That's not going to happen again. This team is much better. The coaching staff as overall is going to be much better. And there won't be a repeat of that next year. So now we get into, they didn't have a third round pick. They didn't make any moves to get a third round pick, which was disappointing. But their first pick in the fourth round was Darrell Jackson, defensive tackle from Florida State. The one thing that everybody was saying about him was if you were going to build a defensive tackle, a prototypical defensive tackle, this would be the guy you build. What's the problem? Doesn't get it done. Inconsistent effort, which is a little bit of a problem for me when you see someone who's got all the talent to dominate and be someone who should have been a first-round pick, but just to play on the field didn't match that. But, again, big-bodied. That's, I got my notes here. Raw power, a lot of upside, is going to need to be developed. Carl Dunbar, again, I think is definitely a guy that's going to do that for us. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how he progresses. There's a lot of people who were excited about that pick when the Jets made it. Again, you're in the fourth round at this point. These are the guys this is your depth. I mean, look, I'm not saying you can't hit on some starters. Of course you can. But this is also where you still need depth. You're not going to, hit grand slams on every pick. So at this point, you're trying to find talent, upside, somebody you think could be coached up. And I think they did a great job there with Darrell Jackson Jr. And here we get to pick 110, overall pick 110. This was the pick in the fourth round. This was Cade Klubnik. This is why I knocked the draft down. And as I said earlier, they give him the high IQ, good mobility, but he never got it done in college. 4 years, at Clemson, great program, low risk quarterback. It was a low risk swing, but that's the thing. You took a swing in the fourth round. You traded a couple other picks that maybe could have you could have used to get into the third round, but you use those picks to move up in the fourth round to take this guy who was given, he was ranked to be in the seventh round, sixth at best. Every mock that I did, he always was available in the sixth or seventh round. He never went higher than that. And, again, these simulators aren't perfect, but they're usually not off by a couple of rounds. So that was really the problem I had, that if they really wanted Klubnik, now look, part of me likes the fact that if you have the conviction for a player, you make the move, this is our guy, go get him. There's a part of me that loves that. But then there's the other part of me that says, if the world said this guy is no better than a sixth or seventh rounder, why did you have to give up assets to move up in the fourth round to pick him when his upside, this may not age well, we'll see, but the upside he's getting, he's being graded at, is at best a QB2. So at best, you moved up to pick a backup quarterback, which the sad part is at this point, he's probably QB2 on this team because it's Brady Cook and Bailey Zappi. I mean, hopefully Russell Wilson, I saw that they met with him. Looks like he's looking to go to TV. Keep it moving. Go ahead. CBS, Fox, whoever the hell somebody wants to sit you. go sit there. Sit there, do your job there, be an analyst. You were a great quarterback at one point. That ship has sailed. And this ship that's turning in the right direction doesn't need you aboard, buddy. Sorry. There's studio work waiting for you. You might be headed for a gold jacket in a few years, but we don't need you wearing a green one next year. So thanks, but no thanks. So Klubnik might be, as of now, the QB2 on this team. Some people still saying they're going to make a move for Derek Carr. I don't see it at all, especially since, again, it's draft capital attached to getting him. So you didn't give up anything in this draft. And next year's draft, I saw that Mel Kiper already had 180 players graded with draft grades for next year's draft. I mean, you're already talking almost a full draft, and he just started the process. So if it's this next year draft is going to be so much deeper, there's no way they're giving up any capital. They should give up any capital in next year's draft to bring in a guy like Carr. You got Geno. I like what Aaron Glenn said. Nobody's putting a time frame on Geno. As long as he's being productive, he stays in the job. No doubt next year they'll pick a quarterback with one of their three first round picks, If they have to package those picks to move up, depending on how well they do, and the Colts and I believe the Cowboys do, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think they'll be in a position next year to pick that quarterback of the future, or definitely package assets to get it. So, but again, the move up to get Klubnik, that's what knocked the draft down for me. And again, you didn't have a 5th round pick. So you didn't have a 3rd round pick. You didn't have a 5th round pick. So to use assets to move up in the 4th round to get a guy like Klubnik, where you could either try to get into the 3rd round or try to get a 5th round pick, that was where a miss for me. So I wasn't thrilled with that. That is the only pick that not only disappointed but also shocked me that they made. The next pick 188. This was in round 6. Inez Cooper, guard from Miami. Powerful, physical interior lineman, size and strength. Again, depth, offensive line depth. This is what they need. He's a developmental piece, but he's got high upside. He definitely has some high upside. You need protection. You need depth. That's just, especially on the offensive line. That's supposed to be the strength of this team. There were a few linemen that some people thought they'd go after earlier. Again, this is where my disappointment comes in with not either getting a 3rd round or 5th round pick. Now you're taking these swings in later rounds, and you did it with some undrafted free agents. So, but still, big guy, looks like he could be a mauler. Definitely will be interested to see how the Jets develop him. Round 7, this is interesting. VJ Payne, safety from Kansas State. Big guy, big safety. It's funny, one of the draft, I think it might have been Connor Rogers, who had Klubnik graded as a 7th round pick, and he had Payne graded as a 4th round pick, and they got those guys flip-flop. It's always interesting to see how these things play out. Just watching the different draft nicks out there making their projections, and sometimes when you're watching it, guys, and again, just really quick, let me close it on VJ Payne. Again, special teams contributor. He's got developmental upside. He's a big, fast safety that has a perfect last name anyway, for playing safety with Payne. But so I that rounds out the Jets draft. So again, that's an A- for me. The only reason for the minus was the trade up for Klubnik. Didn't like that at all, because I think it stopped them from either getting a 3rd or 5th round pick where they didn't have picks, which kind of then stretched them out on day 3 of the draft. But overall, definitely elite talent infusion with the top 4 picks that they made. Obviously, these are weapons for the next quarterback. They're continuing to add weapons to, and next year they'll do the same. My hope is for next year that it's somebody else's pick who's the worst pick that gets us that quarterback. I don't want it to be the Jets pick that is the higher pick that gets us that quarterback. Let somebody else stink in this coming season so that we, either Colts or whoever, I believe it's the Cowboys, or I'm not sure if that's the Cowboys or I think it's the Cowboys pick. If I'm not mistaken. My apologies again. Was a little under the weather, but I believe it's the Cowboys and the Colts. I definitely know it's the Colts pick that they have in the first round next year. I think that it's got to be the Colts. You hope Daniel Jones is either not 100% healthy, not all the way healthy, or goes back to the Daniel Jones of old and shows that, he's not the guy he is the guy everybody thought he was. That Colts team just continues to suck wind, and that pick becomes, the gift that keeps on giving, the Sauce Gardner trade. And that is a pick. Maybe we package that pick with the lower pick to move up into a higher pick if necessary, because there's already 5 or 6 quarterbacks being graded right now as first round quarterbacks in next year's draft. So you don't have to have the number one pick. That just guarantees you the number one pick. Of course, guarantees you the pick of whoever you want. But you see it year after year after year. The first quarterback taken is not always the best quarterback taken. That's just the way it goes. It's a crapshoot anyway. Most of the time in these drafts, it's 50-50. And the thing I was alluding to a second ago about, you watch some of these people how they're grading these drafts, and what makes me laugh is they're not grading it. Sometimes when you watch how they're grading it, they're not grading it. Well, they're doing 2 things. One, they're grading the players, and this is the disclaimer they give. I'll give D'Angelo Ponds as a perfect example. 5'8", 5'9". If he was 6'2", we'd be talking about him as first round pick. If this guy was 6'5", if this guy ran this much faster, if this guy was this much bigger, when did that become a criteria? Of course, if a guy was a certain size or a certain rate or ran a certain speed, and I talked about this in an earlier podcast, but it came up again all weekend long during the draft. Well, if this guy was 6'5", we wouldn't be talking about him like this. They talk about Ty Simpson was another one. Was he 6'1", 6'2"? If he was 6'5", we'd be talking about nobody would be complaining that the Rams took him at 13. But he's not 6'5", and he won't be 6'5". So you can't say if he was something he's never going to be. Ponds is 5'9", 5'8", 5'9". If he was 6'1", he never will be. So you can't. That's, to me, that's BS. You can't use that as, well, I have him here because if he was tall, he would be here. But he's not. So you got to grade them as what they are. The other thing is they grade based on who they would have picked in that spot. Not if the guy's was worth picking in that spot. Not if it was a good pick overall. It's, I wouldn't have made that pick in that spot. Therefore, it's a bad pick. What? Who the hell are you? Oh, I wouldn't have picked Klubnik in that spot either. But I'm not sitting here just crucifying the Jets, giving them, as like I said, some people were giving the Sadiq pick an F because no way would they have picked him at 16 with Mekhi Lemon still sitting there. They would have. So there's you're using your personal bias, not any kind of grading system, not anything you saw on the field. It's your personal bias saying, because I wouldn't have done this, that means this pick is a bad pick. It's a failed pick. I knocked their grade out. Mine had nothing to do with that. My simply was not only the round you picked them, but that you moved up to do it, and it cost you potentially elsewhere. And the player was not graded anywhere that I saw as a 4th round pick. A lot of these guys, Sadiq was graded as a 1st round pick. Every simulation I ran had him going in the first round and going around where the Jets got him. So it wasn't a reach. If you wanted Mekhi Lemon and they took Sadiq, and then some, as I said, some of those people, then when the Jets got Omar Cooper Jr. later in the first round, then they, now it makes sense. Okay, now it makes sense. No, it made sense the first time. And now it looks even better when they got Cooper. It's okay to say you made a mistake when you graded it. It's so we're fans, we're fanatics. We're not getting paid to do this. Maybe some of you are. I'm not. So you just having fun with it. But it's cool to admit you were wrong. Hey, I was wrong. Guess what? I'm hoping I'm wrong about Klubnik. Hope he turns into a QB1. Hoping they were all wrong about him. That's what you do as a fan. You hope that the ones that they say you got it right on, that they prove you right, and you hope the ones that said you made a mistake on, that you can prove them wrong. That's what else is there to do. But still, to bring your bias to say because I wouldn't have picked the guy here, it's not as if you took a third round in the first round or a guy who scored there. These guys were all scored very closely together, and the Jets had a plan, and it was executed. Because I guarantee you, if they take Mekhi Lemon at 16, not a chance Sadiq is sitting there at 30. No way is that happening. But they played their cards right, thinking, well, Omar Cooper Jr., who some mocked to the Jets at 16. Some did mock. But the Jets, again, whatever their new grading system is, they said Cooper should be there later in the first round. And he might have actually been there at 33, but you know what? To move up 3 spots to make sure you get the guy you want, got no problem with that. I thought they did a fantastic job overall in this draft. Again, I wish they would have made a move to get a third and or fifth round pick, but you can't have everything. It was a great draft. I like some of the undrafted free agents. We'll talk about them now. Next year, they're going to have a ton of cap space, a ton of draft capital, and I will, after I go through the undrafted free agents, talk a little about Aaron Glenn, because I think he for sure is on the hot seat. I don't think Muji is. I think Muji is showing absolutely he's the one that's showing that he's earning his paycheck. Now it's going to be up to Glenn to show and earn his. But just going through some of the undrafted free agents, the top one that comes out was Colin Lacey, wide receiver from Louisville. Explosive, slot, deep threat. He was one of the more notable. Again, with these undrafted free agents, there's a ton of them. You're just trying to find, like, who are the notable ones. He was one of the notable ones. They got Trey. Let me see if I got his name right. Trey Annam, running back from Toledo, physical runner, special teams upside. This is what you're getting late in the draft and in these UDFAs. And the Jets had the top rated special teams last year. You want to keep that going because you're hoping that your offense and defense will now start catching up to what that was. If you have a middle of the road offense and you have an above average defense with great special teams, I'm not saying that means playoffs, but it definitely should mean more than 3 wins. Malik McClain, wide receiver, Arizona State. You could see, again, offense here, wide receivers, trying to get some depth here. The guys after Cooper, Jr., Mitchell, and Wilson, you're all on notice. I think those are the top 3 guys right now, but I think everybody else is on notice. Your spot is not safe. They took 2 offensive linemen, Kobe Barnes from Kansas, Xavier Hill from Colorado. Again, this is where you're trying to find your depth. Practice squad guys, potential backups when the season begins. Defense, Kendrick Blackshire, Mora Bomber, linebacker, cornerback, BYU. They went BYU a lot here in the undrafted free agents. They brought in Will Ferrin, kicker from BYU, and his long snapper, Garrison Grimes. So these are obviously the Jets, Nick Folk leaving. That competition is going to be wide open. So it's interesting they brought in the kicker and his long snapper. as undrafted free agents. So, and another reported signing, I'm not sure if that actually happened. DT Sheffield, wide receiver from Rutgers. Again, you could see what they're doing here: offensive line, kicker, wide receiver, even running back. Brees is not signed yet. So if he plays under the franchise tag, that's almost assured that he's likely not back in 2027. So you need to keep adding depth to your roster, whether it be late in the draft, undrafted free agents, however you're doing it, you got to keep adding that depth because, as we all know, football, brutal sport. And the Jets, you can't get caught out there. With if you're some of your top guys, like last year, Wilson, and not that last year was a banner year, but Wilson gets hurt early on. He still leads your team in receiving yards, and I don't even think he had 400 yards. Just embarrassing. Can't have that. You need to protect Geno. He's 35-year-old. He's not a spring chicken anymore. But you need depth. You have your starting pieces. You built out a nice. So far, you're talking about Brees Hall, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis, Mason Taylor, Kenyon Sadiq, Garrett Wilson, Omar Cooper Jr., Adonai Mitchell, to go along with the offensive line that you had finishing the year. There's weapons there, and you're going to continue to build around who will be your future quarterback that you'll draft in 2027. I think the defense as well. I think a lot of picks next year will wind up going on the defensive side of the ball. You saw, it went Bailey and Pond, so two of their first four picks were on the defensive side. And one thing they didn't address, I thought they might, was the linebacker position. They can still do it in free agency. There's still some guys left, but because you're relying on Demario Davis is older. We're relying on a bounce back from Sherwood. Is there a trade still to be made? Will Muji pull some more magic out of his hat? I think he will. Let's see what he does. But in closing, I want to go into what I was saying about Aaron Glenn. Muji has shown by far, he is definitely worth the paycheck. I'm trying to look, other than nitpicking at a few things here and there, hearing what they're doing, hearing the plan they had, hearing that, it was interesting to hear that last year because it was so soon, they didn't have a chance to revamp how they were going to score and grade their picks, but they did it this year. And I have not seen any draft analysis saying that the Jets had anything lower than a B plus. Maybe somebody had a B. But you're talking about, there were a lot of teams out there with B minuses, C's, and D's, where the Jets were getting B plus, A minus, A's. So while, again, we're used to winning the offseason, Muji has absolutely shown by his shrewdness in trades and the way he's making the draft picks that he's building a talented roster, or beginning to build a talented roster. Now it's on Glenn. Glenn has to show it's your superpower. You said it. Calling the defensive plays. You got Frank Reich. You brought in a lot more experienced coaches this year. All around, all throughout both sides of the ball. You did that. Now it's going to be on you. What last year happens again. You're gone, buddy. I don't know if Muji is, but you surely are. Because if someone can say, look at the not to bring up the Mets, but that it's kind of a similar situation in that they were further along. You could say they spent a lot of money. There's a lot of talent there. And right now on the field for them, it's not looking good. It's not looking good. And it's likely not looking good for their manager. Same will happen for the Jets. If the consensus is there's talent, there's enough talent on this team to win 6, 7, 8 games next year, somewhere in that range, and look competent while you're doing it. Not lucking into wins, 2 kickoff returns, a block kick. No, it looks, you look competent. You look like you're running an offense and a defense in 2026, not 2006, not 1986. You're running a competent system. You have on both sides of the ball. If that is shown on the field, no doubt in my mind, he's back in 2027. As well, he should be. But there's guys out there, you're McDermott, Tomlin. So if you falter in any way where it looks anything like it looked like this year, where it looks like you not only last year just was a disaster, but this year with the added talent, the upgrade in coaching, if the result is still, it looks like it's run by an incompetent group. It's being coached with no competence. They just don't look like they belong on the field, which most of the time last year they did not. Barring any type of level of injuries that could derail the season, barring that, if you're relatively healthy, relatively keeping, Wilson stays, you start developing some of these guys, you get 6 to 8 wins, and it looks, they're strong wins, the ones you're getting, and even the games you're losing, you don't just look like you're getting run right off the field. It's how it looks. It's not just what the record says. Because we all saw that with Gase years ago, where he win the last 5 or 6 games, and everybody's like, oh, you laughed at him in his weird press conference when they announced him, and now look what he did. And it was a disaster the following season. It's got to be, it can't just be the record. It's got to be, what are your eyes showing you? How does it look? How does it feel? Does it feel like, you know what? Finally, it feels like we got it right. We got the right coach. We got the right general manager. They're building the team in the right way. Now, again, I'm not sitting here thinking 2027. That came up a lot during the draft. That's why everybody kept saying, well, for sure, this team, the way they built this team, it's definitely going to have a lot of weapons for whoever they pick in 2027. That is true. That is true. That is how it looks. But you can't sit here and ask Jet fans to root against the team to get a better pick in 2027. Can't do it. I saw was it over 20,000 days? Somebody did all the days. I saw like some blurb where they had, because since any New York team won a championship, and then obviously the Jets were the furthest away. I think it was like 20,000, or somebody did it by the days to make it look more dramatic. But still, it's years. It's been years. Forget a championship. It's been too long since again, now it's Buffalo Sabres made the playoffs in hockey. So the Jets now are the longest playoff drought in sports. I believe 15 years. So 14, 15 years, whatever it is. But still the longest. I'm not saying that's going to end this year. I hope it does, but I'm not saying it's going to. But Glenn, everything we're seeing absolutely is putting the spotlight on Glenn to say, okay, buddy, it's your superpower. You were able to rebuild your coaching staff. I brought in a lot more talent, which I'm sure Glenn had a big say in a lot of the guys that they brought in. So not only are you you're able to buy the groceries and you're cooking the meal. So you're able to do it all, buddy. So right now, there's nothing else. And they'll still, I think they'll continue to improve. I think there will be either some small trades or additional free agent signings that they will make to continue to upgrade this roster before we get to training camp. I think that'll definitely happen. Definitely before the start of the season. I think that will happen. Muji will work some more of his magic. I definitely see it happening. So again, the better the Jets are getting with player-wise and talent on the field, the brighter that spotlight is going to be on Glenn to get results. Because with all that capital, all that cap space, draft capital and cap space next year, if it doesn't look good in 2026, you cannot expect to be handed that again to say, okay, that's 2 years now we haven't seen it. Here's all of this. Now let's see if you can show it to us in 2027. Won't happen. Won't happen. Got to see it on the field, or else someone else is going to be buying those groceries in 2027. Won't be you, my friend. Definitely won't be you cooking the meal. So with that being said, thank you everybody for liking and subscribing and all the comments I'm getting. Really having fun doing this. Sorry, I was away for a little bit, not feeling well, but I'm back. Again, until next time, talk to everyone soon.